When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Rescom YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Jon VI, A Game of Thrones, and continuing on in our reread. I do want to say I am kind of recovering from a little bit of illness, so I hope that doesn't bother you guys too much in this video. If you guys see me have weird cuts or it just seems like I'm talking faster than normal, that's why. But chapter 6 for Jon is pretty good. I think it's actually one of the better ones for Jon. Jon is a weird character to me because I don't think his chapters are bad in this book at all. But he also doesn't have like any of the bigger chapters of the book. He's definitely a little bit more of like, you know, every time you go to his chapter, it does feel like the pacing kind of slows down a little bit, especially when you're looking at big characters right now like Ned, Catelyn, Tyrion at this point of their character arcs. But the chapter opens again with Sam and Jon having breakfast. Again, just a reminder, the last chapter, Jon V, dealt with Sam not being able to move up in the Night's Watch because he wasn't seen as fit to. And so Jon does this whole elaborate plan and gets Aemon to get him in. So this is very shortly after that. Sam informs Jon that he has been summoned to the Sept. He is being pushed on to assist Aemon to write and to handle the birds, which again, perfectly fits Sam and what he would be good at. And it shows again how Jon is very smart, because Jon also just doesn't tell this to Sam because again, Jon wants Sam to believe that, yeah, the Night's Watch thought he was good enough to do this. Not that Jon had to kind of manipulate events, which is going to be interesting given the way that's actually paid off a little bit later in the story, not in this book specifically, but A Storm of Swords, when Jon is made Lord Commander, and how we see Samwell doing a lot of that manipulation as well. But again, Jon is happy to hear this, obviously, because he's the one that set the whole thing up, but he notes that it is a warmer day than usual. Again, maybe this is noting how these are still summer kids, right? These people and Sam, Jon, Halder, all these people that are going into the Night's Watch, they're still very young. They're very green, as you would say. And one of the big parts of this is we've seen a lot of character growth from Jon, but he is still a kid, and he's going to struggle with that in this chapter when it comes to his role in the Night's Watch. And so this could be just a nice little wink to that of the current climate. It's not as, you know, cold as it usually is. But at this, they head to the Sept, and the others are shocked to see Sam, but no one says a word. It is a little interesting, right? Because Sam, compared to everyone else, is not good at sword fighting. He's not good at archery. He's not good at a lot of things that the average person would be good at. They all seem to, you know, at least like Sam up to this point, but he doesn't really show any of those outward characteristics that would assume that he would go forward. And also, he wasn't named earlier on in like the last chapter anyway. So this gets us into page 516. They note that all of the Kai captains are here, namely Aemon, Mormont, Thorne, Bowen Marsh, Yarwick, you know, just basically all the people in charge are here at this meeting to see these people through. Mormont notes how they have all had different backgrounds and have come to them to wash away their past and start more or less a new life. They will now leave everything behind, old loyalties, loves, and families. All of this is very important to Jon's character specifically, but for others as well. But they are now one house once they take the vow at evenfall. Again, it just shows you this is the point, right? There's no coming back from this point. You are giving up everything that you had before. Right, whether that was your old family, whether it was, you know, an old fling you had. This is a very important moment in Jon's life, and will be something that's very open to interpretation later on after his death and dance. But this is, again, a big decision. Once the vow has been said, it cannot be undone. The penalty for desertion is death. Mormont asks if anyone would like to leave before they proceed, and none do. Again, it kind of comes to this point where a lot of these people are not here because they want to be. And if those people are here and they want to be, you're not going to be backing down at this point. So it doesn't really make sense for someone to leave at this point, right? Like maybe you have second thoughts, but if you've already made the trip to the wall, you're probably just going to take the vow. Mormont then asks if any of them take the old gods, and Jon confirms by saying that he does. Again, Starks take the old gods makes a lot of sense. And he even notes this. The Starks, like Benjen, took his vows from a weirwood tree. So Mormont then informs him that there is no God's Wood at Castle Black, but there are some weirwoods north of the wall, unmolested half a league away. Again, makes perfect sense, but I think the best part of this little exchange is when Sam pipes in, because Sam is someone, again, who's from the South, very deep in the South, I might add. He doesn't really know anything about the old gods, really, unless it's from readings or something like that. And he pipes up asking if he can go as well. And I think the more important part of this is the response that Sam is going to give Mormont for why he takes it. But Mormont asks if the Tarleys kept the old gods as well. And Sam, very nervously, again, I can completely understand this, especially when I was a lot younger. You know, you're talking in front of all of your superiors. You know, it can be very nerve-wracking. But he says that no, he was born under the Seven along with his family for 1,000 years. So Jeremy Riker, who is in charge of the Rangers at this point, asks why would he forsake the gods of his house? But this is the interesting part. Sam says the Night's Watch is now his house. So that stuff doesn't matter. Again, showing that Sam understands what he's doing, what he's getting himself into, and is playing that role well now. But also that the Seven never answered his prayers, but maybe the old gods will, which is a great, fantastic discussion point. Because we've talked about this a lot on this channel, is the idea of the Seven are very closely tied to like Christianity, where it's a faith-based system. You're not given like actual signs to prove that, oh, this is the religion, this is what is happening. It's more like you're putting your faith in the Seven, Jesus, whatever you want to say. And so when you look at someone's life that's gone wrong, right? Sam has not had, you know, the best life. I think he's had a better life than a lot of people in this world have, given that he grew up in privilege. But, you know, a bad father figure pushes him into, you know, this not great life at the Night's Watch. You know, you might start to think like those new gods, the Seven specifically, don't help me. They've never been there for me. They've never shown me a path. And so maybe you go to the old gods who might have more power. I think that's an interesting discussion point and something I really like because it ties into actual religion really well. But at this, Mormont approves of this and has handed a parchment and explains that they will be sorted into duties by their strengths. Again, we talked about this a lot in depth in the last chapter for Jon. But again, it's more or less, how do we use everyone's abilities to the fullest? And we shouldn't be wasting people. That was Jon's argument to Sam, especially when you look at the condition of the wall. How undermanned it is, that's going to be a big struggle that Jon's going to have in book 5. And I've been enjoying reading Jon so far in book 5 as I'm starting to get into that for my retrospective. But yeah, I think it's interesting the way the wall works. But Mormont notes Halder to the builders, Gren to the rangers, Albert to the builders, Pip to the rangers, Samwell to the stewards, Mathar to the rangers, Daron to the stewards, Toddler to the rangers, and finally Jon to the stewards. Wait, Jon to the stewards? That's exactly what Jon thinks. He's shocked by this. How could he be part of the stewards? This must be a mistake. He is about to voice this opinion until he meets Thorne's eye and knows it's true. Thorne is very pleased with himself, smirking and smiling. And Jon realizes, or in his mind thinks, that Mormont has set him up. But at this, Mormont finishes and tells them to report to their higher-ups, and they leave. Thorne looking the happiest he has ever been. Now, I want to put this into Jon's perspective, right? Jon is this person that, you know, at this point of his life, he is trained, you know, extremely hard. He's one of the better swordsmen, probably even at the wall in general. He is someone that is already showing great leadership qualities when it comes to helping out other people. He shows that he's very clever when it comes to how he gets Sam to help Aemon. He is someone that's shown a lot of great qualities of a ranger. And when you think about that's really Jon's dream, right? When you think about like when you were younger, whatever your dream career was, say your dream was to be a doctor or your dream was to be a police officer. That's basically just been thrown away, right? Now you're something else. So say you wanted to be a police officer. Well, now they're telling you that you have to be a mailman. That's not going to strike you correctly if you've been training this whole time to be a police officer. That's kind of what Jon is going through right now. And Jon is so young, he doesn't understand what's really going on. Why would he be placed into the stewards? Now, at this point, he doesn't actually have good information to go off of. He's just been told he's a steward. He doesn't know what his actual role is yet. But that'll get us further in. At this, everyone is sorted out. The Rangers go with Riker, the Builders with Yarwick, leaving Sam, Daron, Eamon, Marsh, and the Septon. I believe there's a couple others, they're just not named at this point. But Marsh informs Sam he will take Chet's old chambers as he is moving closer to the Hounds to help with them. Again, something that may come up a little bit later. But, you know, if I was Chet, I would be pissed. Like, he gets these nice, you know, chambers next to Eamon. Now he's down with the dogs. It's not a good improvement. But Sam will be close to help Eamon day and night to serve him. Daron is being sent to Eastwatch as he is a good singer and will be helpful with his abilities to try and get better pieces or better prices for the stuff they are trading for from ships coming up to Eastwatch. It's kind of insane to me that the people even come up to Eastwatch in general. I'd be interested to see like how much profit is even in that venture. But that is a little interesting in my opinion. But that gets us into page 519. So moving into page 519, Marsh then turns to Jon and says he is to be Mormont's personal steward as Mormont has requested this, which that should ring off some alarm bells. Mormont specifically wants you to be his steward. He didn't just put you into the stewards, right? Like he didn't just say, oh yeah, you're just going to be a basic steward like everybody else. No, he requested you personally. That's something that Jon doesn't pick up on and Sam does, but again, I understand why Jon doesn't get it right now. He's still pissed. He already thinks he's formed what happened in his mind. He thinks it's all because of Thorn. But Jon, again, he's still upset, and he asks his duties and asks if they take him for a servant, right? He's upset because he's going to have to probably run his meals. He's going to have to change his bedded clothes or change his bedding. He's going to have to do all this stuff that he doesn't want to do. He wanted to be a ranger. And I want to take this moment to even think about, is being a steward so bad? For Jon, it's something where it's like, yes, because he wanted to be a ranger already, but think about it. You know, you have this time period now where the others are seeming like they're coming back. The wildlings are growing in strength. Why would you want to be a ranger? Your likelihood of death is far higher than a steward. And a steward doesn't seem like a bad life compared to what the Rangers go through. I mean, think about the Rangers. The Rangers at times will have to live without shelter, without cover, north of the wall for maybe upwards of a week or even more than that, right? So I think the way the stewards are perceived, it's kind of like this hierarchy where people view Rangers as this very high honor, but yet in reality, it's a very tough life. It's not very pleasant. I mean, think about how Benjen has become as a man, in my opinion. I think it really reflects his job and his role. But at this, Eamon speaks up, saying they took him for a man of the Night's Watch, but maybe they were wrong on that. Again, it's interesting because we look at Eamon and Jon's last discussion and the way that people are being used, right? Like, how do you divert all this manpower to the right roles and all of that? And I think it's, again, Jon not understanding that role. But at this, Jon is at a boiling point on his thinking on his future and wishes to go, which Marsh grants. Jon looks at the wall in anger as him, Sam, and Daron leave. But Sam, again, understanding how all this is going down, he asks Jon if he understands what is going on. And Jon thinks it is Thorn's work. He is the one that is, deemed him for a life of servitude. But Daron chimes in saying the stewards are fine for him and Sam, but not for Lord Snow. Again, this is a fair point, right? Like, Jon is straight up talking down to Sam and Daron for being stewards. And Jon is even more heated. He says he is a better rider and swordsman than any of them. It is not fair, which is, again, another point of debate here, which I love. It's like, life isn't fair. Jon, of all people, should know that. He's a bastard just because of who his mother was, or, in this regard, who his father was as well. He has been basically thrust at the wall, at the watch, because of that, because of how Catelyn treated him, because of all these things. Of everyone here, he should be one of them that should realize what fairness is. And then even when you talk about the characters he's talking about here to Daron and Sam got threatened to death if he didn't come to the watch. He was the heir to a castle. Let's talk about fairness. I mean, Sam has had a very rough life when it comes to fairness. Daron, coming from, more the lower class, middle class, his story, again, we don't know if this is true or not, but if it is true, that he slept with the Lord's daughter, and because of that, he got sent to the wall, even though she was willing. Again, in his words. So it's interesting the way he talks about fair, because a lot of the ways people ended up here have not been fair whatsoever. And Daron, again, talks exactly what to talk about, especially from his point of view. But Sam says after Daron leaves, there's no shame in being a steward, and Jon says he does not want to wash an old man's clothes for the rest of his life. But again, Jon not seeing the big picture. This is when Sam starts to really reel back what's really going on here. But he notes, yes, an old man and one you will be with night and day. And that gets us into page 520. And again, the way Sam is going to continue with this is like, he's going to recount what he used to do with his father, Randall. He notes how Jon will be there for everything, counsels, attend him in battle, all of that. Sam then explains how his father did the same thing because he was grooming him for role, whether that was being at meetings, whether that was seeing how it's done, because you are going to be the Lord after Randall dies. And Jon even like thinks about this critically and goes, wait, that's exactly what Ned did with Robb as well. And so he's kind of starting to figure it out, but he stubbornly notes that he never asked for that, which is again another point. It's Jon being thrust into potentially a leadership role when that's not really what he wanted. He just wanted to be a ranger. And in a lot of ways, he's actually getting condemned to a much harder life, having to rule over all of these different types of people, if that comes to be, which it does. So it's an interesting little point, like, that we don't remember, is that Jon really didn't even want to rule. Like, that prospect was not something that he enjoyed. Sam then responds very wisely, none of us are here for asking, which is another great point, circling back to the idea that a lot of people that came here didn't want to even be here in the first place. At this, it sparks the shame in Jon as he remembers his last meeting with Benjen and how you get what you earn on the wall, and that he was just a green boy. He apologizes to Sam, saying he was being a fool and he had the right of it. Again, just a great little character arc here for Jon that again shows how he's still very young, but also how he, when presented the evidence, is willing to accept his wrongs and to apologize, which I think is really good. But at this, Jon promises to stay and do his vows, and that to do his vows with Sam, and that the old gods are waiting. They set out late that afternoon, and they go through the dark tunnel leading out into the north. They are stopped 3 times for iron bars to be unlocked. Again, just shows the defenses of Castle Black, something that will be important later on in the story. But that gets us into page 521. So moving on, Jon was relieved to be on the northern side of the wall, and Sam asks if wildlings would ever come this close to the wall. And Jon notes they never have. Again, very interesting given the conflict the wildlings and the Watch will have later on in this series. But also something that's interesting is the tunnel seems to be very ominous. It seems very foreboding, right? Jon, the entire time he's in this tunnel, feels kind of creeped out, right? Is there some sort of magic that's still there, which has kind of been implied with the wall? We may never know, but it is a little interesting to think about in the way George writes this whole little passage here. Jon then calls to Ghost, to everyone's shock, asking if he will really bring the wolf with them, and he says he will, as Ghost kind of goes off into the forest to more or less, I would say, hunt. They entered the forest, and it was much like the wolves would back at Winterfell, but also very different. Jon notes how ominous the wood felt, and how you could hear everything. It felt like a different world to him. Again, it shows how Jon wants to be a ranger, but yet he has no idea anything north of the wall, right? Even now, this wood makes Jon feel inexperienced, young, and feels like a different world. Again, it shows how Jon maybe shouldn't be wanting to be a ranger, just given out his first experience here. But finally, they reach a clearing and see a spectacular sight of 9 weirwood trees watching as they approach. Again, this is pretty insane, given what we've seen of the weirwood trees within Westeros and the God's Wood. This is kind of insane. I mean, this has to be some of the old gods' best places of power. And even as they kind of approach, right? You know, Marge commands them to dismount, but because they don't want to defile it. But as they go closer, Sam notes how the old gods are watching them as they knelt to say their words. It really gives this idea that they are definitely being watched. And I think this whole end part of the chapter, there seems like there's something else going on. Like Bloodraven seems to me that at this point he's doing some type of work here, or some magic, or some reason to continue on as part of Jon's plot. But I want to talk about a certain part of their speech as they go down to do their vows. Firstly, I want to talk about the idea that this vow ends upon death. There is nothing given to what happens if you come back. So given the way Jon's story arc I think is going to go in Winds of Winter, I think that's an important part to think about. But also, there's a couple of specific lines that I find very interesting given their relation to the others. They say that I am the fire that burns against the cold, the light that brings the dawn. Those are some interesting words, given that, you know, when you think about Lightbringer, the bringing of dawn, it gives you a lot of Azor Ahai vibes. And so I wanted to note that because I think that's very interesting going forward on the story. But at this, Marsh notes that they knelt as boys and they arise as men of the Night's Watch. Again, they are applauded by the other escort they have here, and one of the men then say they should start heading back. The forest feels different. But interesting enough, Ghost comes out of the forest looking very similar to the trees. Even Jon notes this, with Ghost being white with red eyes, and he doesn't ever speak or bark or whatnot. This is all interesting given, okay, think about the weirwood tree, it's almost the exact same, but if we even apply that to a character like Bloodraven, he's also described quite similar to that. And so I think the idea of Ghost's, what he looks like, and how Jon was the only one that could hear Ghost and find him, I think there's more to that than George is leading on to at this point of the story, or that he's given us evidence for, because I think Bloodraven really had a hand in that. But seeing all of this, we see that Ghost has something in his mouth, something black, and Jon calls to him, and they all realize it is a hand. Again, is this a situation in which Bloodraven could be warging into Ghost to find this hand? Because it's very important to the story going forward. This is going to lead to the revelation that the others are back. And that's going to basically prompt everything that's going to happen in book 2, all very important, because this is going to lead to Mormont being killed. And so this is the way that Jon becomes Lord Commander, important, and I think in Bloodraven's whole plan. So all of that's interesting because it just takes this one moment here, this one finding of a hand, to change the entire story for Jon. Think about going forward, what his struggle is going to be. On one hand, you're going to have the struggle of the Night's Watch against the others, which has just been revealed to Jon. But on the other hand, you're going to have Ned's imprisonment, Robb's cause going south. But that is the end of the video. So thank you guys all for watching. I think this might be the shortest video of the entire series so far. It's a very short chapter. There's actually other shorter chapters in this book, I think. But this one, there just isn't a lot to talk about when it comes to, like, there's not a ton of dialogue in it. A lot of it's just, you know, explaining things to you that I've already explained to you. So, yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed. I'm actually glad this was a shorter chapter. I just needed it because I'm getting over being sick. I hope that wasn't too distracting for you guys if you noticed it. And yeah, it also was nice because this is my first week of school, and I'm still trying to adjust to my schedule right now because school screwed me over. I am in a situation where I have to get all of my, you know, schoolwork and all of my YouTube stuff done kind of in the morning. So it's a little different, but yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed. I'm looking forward to another great year with you guys, and hopefully this is the year we get through this book. I know we've had some skipped weeks here and there because of whether that's the event or me being sick. So, you know, I want to get through this book at least by the end of this year, which should be much quicker than that anyway. So thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.